we have here with us Shaylor. Shaylor, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, thank you. My name is Shayla Mwonje, and I work with the Global E-Schools and Communities Initiative. JC is a grantee of a GP KIX program, the Adapting Assessment into Policy and Learning that was implemented in East Africa. But we are looking forward to hearing how you will learn from what has happened to this end and how maybe we can collaborate to work on this towards your side.
Thank you very much, dear,
Thank
for the
you.
introduction. Yeah.
Thank you.
And we would introduce the speakers as soon as they start taking the floor. I would like to welcome you everyone into joining the Knowledge Café, the month of December Knowledge Café, because it's a monthly event. And it's really a pleasure having a very important talk today about KIX projects. Today, we're going to talk about 5 KIX projects about data, all right? Data and data systems and data use, synthesis study, and we're going to hear about the preliminary findings. Today, we're having 2 speakers. We'd have Angela Arnott, and we'd have George Bister. And now I would give the floor to Angela. Please, Angela. I would now stop screen sharing, and then you can share your screen.
Thank you. Thank you, Rasha. We are also having Mohammed Fofana, who is part of our team. He has joined the group here. So, yeah, so I will introduce ourselves. We are a research team of 5. In addition to myself, Fofana, and George, we have also Dr. Louise Crouch, who is a senior education economist and sits on various UIS boards and GPE boards on data. And we have Mr. Alpha Bar, who is the Director of School Quality Assurance in the Gambia, and also sits on the UIS Technical Committee for the SDGs. So we're largely African-based. Both George and I are South Africans, and Fofana is from Cote d'Ivoire, and Alpha Bar is from the Gambia. So you can see we have some bias towards the African systems, but I think the KIX research that we're sharing with you are happening across the world, particularly in our KIX regions, including your own. So I will start off by sharing the presentations on the different KIX research topics. And then if we could have a small discussion afterwards on any ideas that you might have as to how to extend the reach of these research projects in terms of like new guidelines or additionally just jump into it. So we were looking at 3 areas: learning assessment, the application and use of data to inform policy and planning, and the designing and scaling of data systems. The first one, and we have Shaylor here from Global E-Schools, they were responsible for the KIX grantee on this one, which is the Adapting Assessment into Policy and Learning, called ADAPT. And here they were advocating the use of learner assessment data to inform and influence policy, in particular, an East African household survey that was part of the I think it's part of the PEL network. Correct me if I'm wrong, Shaylor. And trying to advocate for its use. It was a tool that was developed by Uwezo, who is a PEL member in the East African region. So they looked at how to promote its integration into curriculum and into teacher development and into assessment. So the finding was that the take-up was good, particularly in Zanzibar and Uganda, less so in Kenya and Tanzania, for various reasons. The primary one being that the project was only 2 years long, and that policy change is a long process and it needs a lot more engagement. But they had very strong knowledge translation and dissemination strategies with capacity building for the media, for parliamentarians, for engaging in any sort of national conference that dealt with teacher development and curriculum change. The second learning assessment research was around the PAL Ilana, which focused on, it's a new tool that built on the previous ICANN. And this one looked at numeracy of 4 to 10-year-olds, but it was complemented with a literacy, a similar literacy tool, but KIX only funded the numeracy part. The importantness of this particular innovation is that it is working across 12 countries, many of them in Asia, and it's looking at how to assess, using a digital tool, how to assess the numeracy and literacy in 4 to 10-year-olds on a comparable basis. It took a long time for the tool to be designed and trialed. They have kind of upscaled it from the original ICANN, which had only been implemented in 1 district, and now it's implemented in 3. And it's one of the few comparable district citizen-led surveys that will look at the issue of disability. So it was seen to be very cost effective, or it seems to be a lot cheaper in Asia than it is in West Africa, but that's something that could be overcome. It is building the capacity of local partners in each country, but not necessarily the ministries of education. And there is a tendency, as those of you who are familiar with the citizen-led assessments, to have some sort of kickback. Ministries often don't have the technical understanding and expertise to really engage with these tools, particularly as they're outside of the traditional system. And so their uptake is to some extent limited. But as I said, this tool has not yet been fully implemented. It's just been trialed and is ready to roll now. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Fafana, because he was the researcher on Data Must Speak. So I will leave it to you, Fafana. Over.
Okay, so thank you, Angela. Thank you, everyone. So I'm going to talk about Data Must Speak Positive Deviance project. So briefly, Data Must Speak Positive Deviance is a global UNICEF initiative implementing since 2014. So this project aims to address the evidence gaps to mitigate the learning crisis using existing data. So since 2020, through the coalition of partners, including Global Partnership for Education, Knowledge Innovation Exchange, Jacob Foundation, UL Foundation, NOROD, and Internal Unified Resource, Data Must Speak adopt a more systemic approach to advocating for the use of existing data set to inform ministries' understanding of implementing effective school strategies. The project is co-created with ministries of education in 14 countries across Africa, Latin America, and Asia. So we are going to talk about synthesis, evidence, and insights. The first one is use of educational management information system data to derive locally existing solution. Yeah, that can address knowledge in defining and scaling locally existing solution to recurring and novel education challenge. So the second one is identify driver of performance in schools that can be integrated, scale up system-wide. In fact, it's using merge, emis, and mixed data, and Data Must Speak identify and rank school on a typology of performance. Qualitative study of those drivers of performance is cool. Identify behavior level for optimizing performance at scale that can be integrated into planning and policy. We have also thematic area of exploration of leadership and management. Also, Data Must Speak are a strong gender and social inclusion focus on disabilities, rural location, and gender. The implementation of Data Must Speak are 5 stages. So, for a second reminder, the first stage the next is identification of positive deviant school and school typology. The 3 stages is understanding school level, positive deviant behavior and practice. The 4th stage is investigated level for optimum scale. The 5th stage is country level, knowledge use and global mobilization. So in the 5 stages, the 5 stages not implement as phase set by capacities and need of ministries. The country are interviewed. Most of this country are at a phase 3 or 4, except Nepal. Next slide, please. So let's talk about take-up and barrier. About take-up, we have the cost-efficient and effective use of data on positive deviants. Ministry of Education value Data Must Speak multivariate analysis deviant at cost or effective, like Madagascar, Togo, and Laos. Some Nepal produce equity aidings to target support at local level. Others, Zambia, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire are linked to school identifier with exam and produced community profile and capacity building. All value the Data Must Speak study on GC terms scaling up positive model, practice and co-creation approach. We also have new tool, equity aidings, common ID with exam, community profile for profile of better than accepted school outlier. We also have methodology based of behavioral and scaling science. We have also co-creation approach and capacity building of ministries. Let's talk about barrier. To barrier, we can notice that donc prematurate to access scaling, COVID-19, politics need to formalize community of practice. It's a long co-creative process, often national data set not integrate, complicated methodologies. We also have integration of national data set complicating methodology. So Data Must Speak have a strong overlap with mixed eagle and possibility with DHIS2, PAL, and etc. So it's over for me. Give the floor to my next colleague. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So the Data Must Speak is part of the thematic area looking at innovations around data analysis and the use of data to improve policy and planning. The second one is the Mixed Eagle. So
sorry, I wonder if we can't do mine next, because I'll tell you why.
You need to go.
I'll have to be going at 2 o'clock.
Okay,
right.
I'm also here.
All right, fantastic, Alpha.
So George, George, please allow me. I am
okay. George,
also
can you
suppressed.
Alpha
Okay.
intervene? Okay.
Okay, thanks.
It's just 2 slides, Alpha.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Can I start? Good morning
Yes.
from Banjul. I'm very glad to join you and to have reached this juncture of this assignment and knowledge synthesis. Just like my colleague said, the Mixed Eagle, like just picking up from where Mr. Pofana stopped, there is a strong overlap and strong relationship between Data Must Speak and Mixed Eagle from many angles, from the angle of the institutions that are around Data Must Speak, in terms of the partners, in terms of the ministries and agencies. Similarly, Mixed Eagle is also initiated by UNICEF based on the mixed data that is collected in the various countries, whereby they use mixed data and including households data, that working with National Bureau of Statistics and collecting the data. And then Mixed Eagle now looks at the existing household data, both for health and education. But the Eagle part is the only education component part that is zeroing in it with the view of trying to get more analysis that is aimed and targeting senior and policy managers at the education sector, which is a very, very good practice. We have realized it, having involved in Mixed Eagles in the Gambia and having to have the review the literature in this KIX-funded Mixed Eagles initiative, synthesis initiative. We realize that this is definitely a very good value addition for additional data that the education sector gets from more value from this assignment of Mixed Eagle. So like in terms of analysis, the household data sort of kind of validate or corroborates what the image data brings. And that's where we are getting Mixed Eagles data useful, because if you look at sub-Saharan Africa, or where most of the Mixed Eagle data are collected, the Bureau of Statistics or national bureaus have a calendar of collecting household survey every 5 years or sometimes 10 years, and usually this is very slow, very low, the data is not available. But with the facts of mix, the education sector managers are able to get data for decision making, and that at this analytical level, to make corroboration and comparison and even evaluate the existing administrative data that the ministry collects. So that's one of the good thing about Mixed Eagle. There is always a very synthesized factory country fact sheet, which is organized such that tailor-made for layperson to understand at the planning unit. Of course, not at the community or other people. When I say layperson, I say not core statistician within the education sector or core planners, but anybody else at the senior and middle management level can understand this fact sheet and interpret them. So, which is also another presentation component that Mixed Eagle add value. And I was with Angela and the team, we realized and agreed that the way Mixed Eagle presents its data, the most education departments or email system don't have that level of analytical and presentation and capacity. So this is one of the reasons why we are recommending going forward Mixed Eagles analytical approach and methodology to be adopted by the ministries, so that they don't have to depend on core. It doesn't have to be like Ministry of Education should not depend on this kind of rigorous analytic of education data only on mix. They could mainstream it in their processes going forward for their education management influence system. So there is new analytic that's always coming that inform policy, and it add value on the use of mix. And then in terms of capacity building, that's another important point. We realize that because it is driven by partners, which is very good, but we are saying that everything revolves around the partners. And there is some involvement of national actors like the Bureau of Statistics, the Ministry of Education, but we are saying maybe it is important for the partners to take a lot of it, so that the local partners to take ownership, take responsibility, so that it is mainstream in their processes and is not driven because of just UNICEF or anybody else who is leading it. So that's one of the things that we thought need to be adjusted. And that again, in terms of the perception for capacity building, need to be improved, because Ministry of Education sit and wait. They are reactive, not proactive around it. You still don't see this kind of approaches in the national planning or in the strategic plan of the Ministry of Education or in their budget. There is nothing like that. So in other words, we sit and wait for the partners to come and say, let's do Mixed Eagle. And then you start, seeing it. We think that should change, because it's a very good process and a very good tool. So these are some of the things that we thought need to be adopted and need to be shared. And the fact that there is already some collaboration with UNESCO IIEP and other universities in Japan and IIP in Dakar to continue providing capacity around mixed eagle. I think I have said a lot. Maybe Angela, the team leader, can close the gaps or orient me where I have not done a very good point.
No,
thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Alpha. We didn't expect you. We thought that you were going to be involved in your UIS meeting. So if we don't hear your voice again, we presume that that's where you are. You've moved on.
Yes, I'm heading out there now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we're on to the final KIX data research project, which is DHIS for education. And if George is there, I will hand over to George. Are you there, George?
Yes, thank you. Hi, thanks everyone. Yes, I did the DHIS for education. I don't know if any of you are familiar with this, but it's used in up to 70 countries in the health sector, and it's been piloted in 3 countries right now. There are 3 different models that it's been implemented under. In the Gambia, it was a full system transformation where there were 350,000 users were enrolled and are currently active. And the second type of model was where they used it in conjunction with the existing system, and it was in addition to the legacy system. So they kept 2 systems in go. And in Uganda, this was possibly its best deployment, where it was used not only in the education sector, but it was actually used across sectorals, and it has become almost embedded into the integrated financial management systems. You can see that a lot of the capabilities of this system is that it's got a very active user base, which obviously translates to massive amounts of updates, apps that are actually being worked on, and it's very vibrant, and there's a good community where people can get assistance. As far as the University of Oslo, they have they've got a lot of support for this, and they have up to master's and PhD programs in play. Next slide, please, Angela. Obviously, the migration from what is existing in the country to what would be required for this is very expensive, and there's a lot of risk associated with it. And a lot of countries, like especially South Africa, would advise people if they want to make a change, is to keep systems in parallel before you stop using one of the systems. It's never a good idea to stop using one and then completely put everything into a new system. So you kind of phase in the new type of application. Obviously, it's as its name implies, it's a district health information system. So the organizational needs, but it has a lot of challenges associated with it. There's obviously enormous capabilities in collection of data from attendance app to tracking and monitoring of medical issues like tuberculosis or even COVID. There is, can I go to the next slide, please? So
now we're moving on to generality. So if you want to talk about the AI component, this is your chance.
Okay, one of the massive benefits of using this system is that you are collecting an enormous amount of data, which is housed mostly in what is currently a PostgreSQL database, which is a relational database. And obviously, this collection of information allows the mining and the mining of data and the mining of trends within this data to be able to take better policy and resource allocation decisions. One of the benefits of using such a system is that you can easily use their open AI, which is a cross database type system where you could essentially take from if you're using a MySQL database, you could port it over to a Postgre using the API. And I think, I've identified a system where they should rather try and provide an integration as a service type service, where people with very low skills can actually just drag and drop different data elements from one database to the other, to be able to have your cross-sectional data mapping. there's enormous opportunities which I've established that hasn't really been even explored by DHIS for the integration of AI, including the standardization of stuff like learning disabilities and academic performance. You could, for example, use not the large language models like ChatGPT, which are very resource intensive and which normally and possibly aren't even available in a lot of these developing countries, to train a smaller language model, which according to IBM has proved to be very, very able to perform just at the same levels as the larger models. The last thing is obviously with the collection of all this data, there's been enormous possibilities and opportunities to collect information related to climate change and maybe allow the education sector to make itself available for climate change funding. Climate change funding obviously is a very big topic on most of the agendas these days, and large amounts of resources and money has been made available and will be made available to fund these initiatives. Unfortunately, the education sector has not identified this as a method of actually securing additional funds. And the funds that are available from the largest from the global climate change fund pool relies on jobs, education, jobs, women, and so which of course is available in all schools. There's a lot of women jobs and a lot of resources and fossil fuels being used in schools. Now, to be able to qualify for education funding in the climate context, one has to have audited data, and DHIS is one of the first opportunities that presents itself to be able to concisely present data which can be verified and audited in exchange for climate funding. So I think that would be about all I'm allowed to say at this stage. There's a lot more in the document. Those are just the highlights of what we came across in the evaluation of the DHIS research undertaking. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Okay, so just to not go into much detail about the KIX impact outcomes that we will be reporting in our document, but just to say that you know, we see that transformation is complex, linear. It's not linear. Sorry, I don't know why it says it's linear, but it's very multi-cyclical. And you know, many of these research innovations are very short and therefore don't have sufficient time to really take impact. One needs at least 3 to 5 years to see an innovation properly institutionalized. The issue about context is important, and that one has to love the problem and not the solution. We did note resistance to change across a number of them. And obviously, you know, quite a few of the KIX grantees are aware of the importance of code designing and code developing. The extent to which this happens varies across the different innovations. And, you know, for example, the Data Must Speak mentioned that their pace of implementation is slow because it's dictated by the ministry. So that's, you know, that has an uptake in that the ministry feels like it's owning the process and it's moving, but then of course it's not as fast as development partners would like, and therefore, you know, they also dependent on external funding, and this becomes an issue. So we've tried to identify some quick wins. We did notice that the bandwidth of some ministries is limited because there's so many new innovations on the table for them to absorb them all. So that's just very briefly our project, and here's our team. So I'll hand it back to you, Russia, and stop sharing so that we can have a little discussion and dialogue.
Thank you very much, Angela, and the team for a very inspiring presentation. I mean, and to know more about data and the challenges and solutions as well. And I think this would open the floor to a very rich kind of discussion. So in terms of like validation or scaling up, or I mean, there are like many levels of discussion. So the floor is yours now. I mean, what are you expecting from the audience to hear from them?
Okay, so even though I and my colleagues have been in the data field for a number of years, I think that our energies and interest have been absorbed by the EMIS of ministries, and to a lesser extent, you know, all the data sources around the ministry that the ministry could tap into. And to a large extent, ministries are struggling with, I think our colleague from University of Oslo yesterday was saying, just getting on top of statistical intelligence. So this is part of expanding the knowledge of ministries, that all of them have national statistical offices. Many of them have mix 6, and many of them have to realize that EMIS is shifting. The Transformation Education Summit talks about a reimagined EMIS. African Union has got this concept of EMIS 2.0. So we are shifting. We are moving to big data. We are moving to individual learner data. We've had individual teacher data for a while, but now it's going to be huge, because now we're going to have all of the student data on a year-by-year basis, and not just once a year, but you know, in a number of the countries that adopted DHIS, some are looking at termly data, some are looking at daily data. So this is putting a new pressure on planning and policy design. So this is a very important research intervention, because it's trying to take what exists outside there, as have UNICEF. UNICEF are the big players on Mixed Eagle and Data Must Speak Positive Deviance. Yeah, they've taken the challenge and have pushed for ministries to now consider how to use data more effectively. So yeah, I'm happy to hear comments from people, what they think, any suggestions on how to improve these research innovations, how to improve the sharing of this knowledge.
Yeah, I was going to pass the ball to Somaira Ahsan, because I mean, our colleagues in Yemen and Sudan, they wanted to learn from the experience of Bangladesh with the IMS, and how did they manage to, you know, develop the system and develop the data system and data collection cycles and other things related to the quality of data. I mean, so Somaira, please, we would like to hear from you.
Thank you, Rasha, and thank you for the team for really very good description of the project. I was really fascinated, and it's a huge work. Like, there are a lot of platforms, data, different learning, really a very comprehensive one, I must say. Actually, I have some queries, and also I will relate with our MEs that we have in Bangladesh. So first, I will ask one question. When you say that you have the low-cost open source platforms, so like, what do you actually mean by that? Is it the MES you were talking about, or a different platform? And how open is that in terms of what do you have in that platform, and how do you share with whom this kind of, and is it linked with the what you were saying, that decentralization of data, or you were talking about something else when you were talking about the decentralization of data? And when you were decentralizing that data, this is the second question actually, and then who are actually using this data and for what purpose? Can you give any example of that? So this is my second question. And if I relate the MES system with Bangladesh, we have a system where from online you can get into the, you can see the map, you can go to different schools even. And in the schools, you can also see how many teachers are there, how many students, how many teachers have training, this kind of data that we have, and we are trying to use it more efficiently, obviously. Recently I was trying to see how these data are being used, by whom and for what purposes, but I could not find any actually very meaningful way of using that data, how they're using that, or like there are data, but then what are we doing with that data actually? So I'm also asking you that how you're, maybe I can learn from you, like, and another thing is maybe you are also working with government. So we also have a GP funded project in Bangladesh. It's a 5-country collaborative project where we are trying to see the effect of a gender and inclusive pedagogies on students' participation and learning achievement. We are at the end of our like the project. And you know that about the scaling, so about negotiating with the government and other stuff, if you have any suggestion for us, because sometimes, you know, we struggle for that, the way it's very much like they have their own way of going, obviously, and they are also very cautious about external funding, who is giving them advice, what to take, what not to, and there are also bigger, obviously, a political context. So how to actually, is there anything you want to share with us so that we can learn from you? Thank you.
Oh, thanks so much, Samara. George, are you able to talk about the DHIS system? Are you
Yes,
there? And then
I'm
I will
here.
talk about scaling. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Mara. Well, you might not have heard it, but what DHIS is capable of doing is, because it's finally embedded and integrated with the health sector, they, for example, were able to identify, not only were they able to identify what schools were actually suffering from tuberculosis, but they were able to go into the school and identify the main super spreaders in those schools, so that they could then go back to the village and actually find out where and stop to mitigate that risk. So that's one specific use of how they've actually integrated the two together. Obviously, because they are able to do unit records, they can identify exactly what child it is. And then they go back to the house of the child and they can see where that disease is coming from. Alternatively, in the absence of that information, they wouldn't know anything. They would just know that there was a problem in the community. So this is a very, very unique way of actually, and useful way of actually integrating the data. I wonder if I can't just share a screen with you to give you an idea of, can I share that? Yes. Here we go. Can you see that? Can you see my screen there?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So this is just a quick little example of what your chat your embedded, how you could use the data. So if you look on the left here, I don't know how many of you are familiar with having used OpenAI and ChatGPT, but Program for Results has created its own language model here, which is called Education Sector Plan. And in this education sector plan, for example, you could use, once you've fed it all the data from the DHIS, you could say to this, for example, you go onto the top here and say, give me, let's take this little one out here. You could say, write an API to port databases from MySQL, which is OpenEMIS. You know, I don't know if you're familiar with OpenEMIS, to what DHIS says. So now, without any skills or knowledge about how to do this, it actually it explains to you. I've already done it because I didn't want you to wait to see it, but it explains to you how to do it, and then it tells you how to install the relevant program, and then it tells you, then it gives you the code on how to actually convert the data from MySQL all the way. So all you do is you copy the code. You see there, you copy the code, copy it, so you can then paste that into your application, and then it'll tell you how to run the API. And then it will tell you, for example, everything you need to know. And if you have any problems, you paste those problems back into the chat box, and it tells you exactly how to fix the problems or what the possible reasons for those problems are. Then you could say to in our education sector plan here, please generate an education sector plan. And then in a few seconds it says, okay, this is what an education sector plan would look like. And it goes through all it lists all the main steps of generating an education sector plan. Now you say, okay, no, that's fair and well. Can you please generate for Gambia? And it says, oh, okay, I can do that for you as well. And it goes and says, this is Gambia, this is where it comes from, this is who it is, these are the partners of it, this is the strategic action plans, etc., all the way down here, right to the end. And you said, okay, that's fine. Thank you for that. Now, can you please give me more details on Gambia's, for example, demographic, education, economic, and cultural aspects, which was part of the education sector plan? It says, yeah, no problem. Comparing this, no, you can go here and you can say, let's go up to the top here. Provider says, yes, certainly. Yeah, here is a detailed explanation of Gambia, and it goes through all the population, urban, rural, ethnic, and language, migration, economic background, levels, everything that you need to know, which it has available up until 23 August, I think 23. Then you say, okay, that's fair enough. But now, can you compare Gambia's education sector plan with one from Cote d'Ivoire? It says, oh yes, of course I can do that. And it tells you all the reasons. This is Gambia, what Gambia does, what Gambia doesn't do, etc. And it tells you, it compares the two. Now, would you like to just ask it a question? For example, you can ask it any question at once, because as you see, it's an education sector language model, and it's been trained a certain way, and you can change its way it's training. So I'm saying to you that you could, for example, ask it any question. Angela, would anyone want to suggest a question that I ask it?
What about how to scale education innovations?
How to scale education and innovations. Let's see what it says. In where? In Gambia. Okay. So it's thinking about that. I don't know if any of you have actually ever done or had access to ChatGPT, but yeah, we've got actually, not only we've got Chat, we've got our own language model.
Yeah. So who can use that?
It's anyone can use it.
Okay.
So now it goes through the process of actually how you set about scaling education. So this is how you would use the data. It's all very well collecting it and doing what you normally do with it, but now you want to actually start to decide and use it for your decision making. So what I'm trying to say is that it can go on and on and on. This is just a skimming the top of the whole environment. There's a lot more to this than what I can present to you in this little presentation. But there you go. It's done everything so far. And I mean, it took seconds.
I would like, while we're watching this, to also answer Sumaira's question about DHIS2. It is a University of Oslo initiative, and it's open source in that it is completely free to use. But obviously, when you are implementing it in a country, there are all kinds of financial consequences or implications. Getting the e-infrastructure and the equipment in place, training people, etc. But it is one of the few. There is another one. There's the Open EMIS, which is a UNESCO data system. But because that wasn't funded by KIX, we didn't look at it. So yeah, there's a number of countries that have adopted it in the KIX funding. It's the Gambia, Uganda, and Togo, as George mentioned. It in the health sector. I hope that answers that question. And then as far as scaling is concerned, there's always this balance between supply-driven and demand-led. And to some extent, development partners and NGOs tend to be supply-driven because often we have the idea and we have the technical skills to kind of implement something. And the way around that, of course, is the co-creation with ministries so that they buy in and there's a sense of ownership. But so I think the what we're seeing is that, you know, there's a whole kind of causal chain that one as a KIX grantee or as a research initiator needs to adopt. And we can go through that and we can share the document with you on that, because I think we're probably running out of time in terms of talking to it.
Okay. So any more questions? I'll be leaving shortly. So if there's anyone more questions, please let me know.
I would like to hear from Dr. Faisal Musa, who is our national coordinator in Maldives, if you have any reflection. Faisal? Do you have any questions or any reflection from your side? Would you like to share the experience of Maldives as well?
Sumara has another question.
Okay. So,
Sorry.
Sumaira, please go ahead.
I have a last question. So, in our AMS, we faced a difficulty, which is kind of a sticky issue. Like when this information, based on this information that you give input, because this information are given input by the school. So each school is giving the input, like how many teachers there, how the physical facilities, washroom facilities and everything, teacher salary and everything. So what happens is that based on that, different decisions are made and schools are recognized or not. So what happens is that sometimes it becomes very high stake, and there can be manipulation of data. And actually the question is who validates this data when it's high stake and there can be manipulation. So I'm curious to learn from you whether you faced anything or you have already taken initiative to validate those data, or what is in the place.
Well, I can answer that one. You know, that was not part of our brief look at that, but I mean, obviously being in the education sector in planning, we've encountered that, you know, there's an incentive to lie about how many children are in your school so that you get the additional grants. The value of the DHIS system and other systems, which are very much more decentralized than web enabled, is that it's available. So not only would the school principal be putting up numbers on a dashboard profiling their school, it would be read by the community, be read by district officials. So it would have some kind of accountability pressures, because the data is increasingly visible and accessible to a much wider group of stakeholders. And that is one of the values that DHIS offers, and so does Open EMIS.
I got it. Yes. Thank you.
So George is just present a ChatGPT analysis on the Maldives.
Yeah, I could see a whole education sector plan and policy analysis for Maldives in 3 minutes. Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, and of course, if this is fed with data, I mean, real data, I think it would make a lot of difference as well. Yeah.
I use it quite a bit, but you have to have the ideas yourself, I think, to speak. It does make mistakes, and what it does is it writes well. It's got a very good approach to summarizing complex information, but I think it still needs to go a significant distance before it's like you can depend upon it to pull out the ideas or the research that you need. So the way in which I use it is I write the research and I write the findings, and then I ask it to kind of improve the quality of my grammar.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I've been using it. But I think if you know, we've got a small group, it seems like we're down to about 6, which is probably just the core group here. So I think we've done enough. And what I'll do is when the policy briefs are ready, I will share them with you, Rasha. You only have English speaking, you don't have French, do you?
No, English and Arabic actually. So not French.
Okay, IDRC hasn't paid for it to be translated into French, into Arabic.
Into Arabic. Okay. All right.
But we will send you the policy.
English for now.
Okay. Yes, I will also maybe ask you to share with Samira our email so she can follow up quickly, because she's extremely interested in this topic. Yeah, so that was great to have the little chat. And oh, here's George
I'm
now.
here in Arabic as well. Yeah, George, you're brilliant. Thank you. Okay.
Very interesting. I always thought
Yeah.
was it from right to left?
Yes,
Okay.
it's from right to left, but it's the indentation is towards the left, but it's from right to left, the sequence of the words.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that brings us to the end of your very inspiring and rich information and presentation. And I think this might lay the floor for a workshop maybe, or another level, or a learning cycle, another level of the use of the outcomes of your projects as well, not only a Knowledge Cafe discussion or a presentation, but or a webinar maybe. So we would see how can we take this into a step further, because it's deserves, you know, more visibility and usage by different education systems.
Yeah, we can bring the KIX grantees who are the experts on the innovations to that. We had most of them in yesterday's KIX Africa meeting.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'd like to, because there's some great ideas around how to adapt them to ministries. For example, the tool on household assessment on life skills.
Yeah.
A couple of ministries have wanted to adopt all the test items and integrate it into their own system to be implemented in schools by teachers rather than using the PAL network. So, you know, there's some great ideas, and yeah, let's look at it. And I will be sending you a survey for all of your colleagues, if you could give me their emails, and then we will see if there's something specific, and we can ask them, would they like a workshop?
Thank you very much for letting us tell you what we know about what we saw, and I hope to see you again.
Thank you very much, and I would take the opportunity to remind all my fellow colleagues of the forthcoming Knowledge Cafe series, because it's every month. It's every month. So the next time is going to be January 11th. So thank you very much for your time and for your dedicated participation, and see you then maybe in the next cafe.
Right then. Bye.
Very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care.